We got the Niners coming in still with all that, favored by 6.5 against these pesky Rams that we always seem to play a little interesting with, but they're banged up as well too. So it's like we got a game of the replacements going on here this week. 43.5 point over under. Injuries on both sides of the balls for both teams. I don't even know where to start. Debo dealing with the calf injury. He's most likely out. You got Kittle listed as doubtful, but that popped up in the middle of the week. He's most likely out. Obviously, CMC's already on IR. You have Puka on IR. Cooper Kupp's been talking about going IR. I mean, just this entire slate here, which was probably set up to be a nice matchup here in week 3, just turned out to be who knows what's going to happen in this game. So let's talk about it. A lot of guys to talk about in this game and what to do because of all the injuries. So let's start at the quarterback positions for both teams. You have Purdy on one side, Stafford on the other. Obviously, a lot of their top options, top weapons, you can argue each of their top 2 weapons are completely gone in this game. So where do you kind of have these quarterbacks ranked, and are you starting them here in 1 QB leagues?
So I struggled with this because 1, I try to take the bias out as a Niners fan, but 2, from a analyst perspective, I have Brock Purdy at QB 11. I have him at QB 11 because we haven't seen the rookies throw a touchdown pass yet. So I have him ahead of the rookies, but behind just about everyone else that you'd want to start, right? And excuse me, I have Brock Purdy at QB 12. I apologize for that. Just behind Dak. So to me, it's interesting that people are so low on him because the offensive line's fine, right? I think you've got a really, really bad team in the Rams. They have no offensive line themselves. They've got a bad defense. It's basically a home game for the Niners because we take over SoFi whenever we travel real well anyway. You're going to see more red than blue and yellow. If I have another option in a single quarterback league, I'd rather go there just because I'm put it this way. Debo's in my bench. He's on my bench right now, and so is Kittle. I'm just planning on both of them being out. So I think it's a smash spot for Brandon Ayuk this week. I think it's a great Jordan Mason and a great Brandon Ayuk this week. But in super flex, I would still play Purdy. You just have to temper your expectations. In single quarterback, like I said, he's right on that cusp for me at QB 12. So I think you can play him, but only because I think the Rams are poor. And if you have a better option, which you probably don't, go there. But if you're the single quarterback, because that's the guy you've drafted, you just play him. And that's probably where he finishes. He probably gets that kind of high-end QB2, maybe gets the passing touchdowns, and gets that back-end QB1 finish for you this week.
Yeah, man, I'm not quite there with you on this one. I actually have Brock here, my boy down here at QB 18. I have Stafford kind of right behind him here at QB 20. And the reason being is, like you said, man, there's just no one there. If Debo and Kittle are both out, it leaves Ayuk. He's not going to go for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think what you said about Mason having a big day, Shanahan might just, if we do get close to that, end zone. I mean, I think he goes for at least a touchdown and probably like 250 yards. But I don't think he can get multiple passing touchdowns in this game. I think, Mason has a higher chance of getting 2 touchdowns in this game. He hasn't really been firing on all cylinders. Purdy has. I kind of haven't liked too much of what I've seen from him. Has been missing a couple throws here and there, but there's just other guys that I feel have, are in some other better shootouts, with all their weapons. That normally I wouldn't have. Normally I kind of have Purdy in that 12 to 14 range when he has all his weapons easily. He's just a walking back in QB1, sometimes even higher in the right situation. But yeah, I just can't get behind either of these quarterbacks this week. Obviously in Superflex you're going to have to start them, but in 1 QB leagues, there's a couple other guys like even Sam Darnold, Dak Prescott. I know you don't like it, but Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins, I even have ahead of him going up against the Giants, and Kirk going up against Kansas City in a potential shootout there. With him looking a little better, I would just feel a little more comfortable with those guys in those potential game scripts.
Kirk Cousins on prime time, buddy. Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. I mean, he was on prime time last week and led a game-winning drive, and we all saw it. So
that's true, but
a lot of pressure too in that situation. They're under pressure, and he still made it happen. They went down.
Chris Jones is a game wrecker.
Yeah, he is. You might talk me into moving up a couple spots, but that's where I have him for now.
Yeah, I have Stafford at 23. I have him as an absolute sit. I don't want any part of the Rams this week. I'll be honest with you. I I know you have to start Kyren, but I don't think Kyren's going to have a great week. I think the Niners are going to stack the box because there's no wide receivers. I think the Niners are just going to stack the box and say, great, beat us somewhere else because we're not going to let Kyren do it. So
right. I have him as a must start just because I think where you drafted him, you have to, and just the given the landscape of running back, you have to. But yeah, I definitely am down on him as well this week. Yep. I actually have him. Ooh, where do I have him? Yeah, I have him as my RB 17. So
let me see. Let me change mine from quarterback. I have him at 16. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So we're about the same on that. Yep. So good stuff. All right. So Juan Jennings, interesting with Debo out, Kittle out. Is Jennings someone you can flex this week?
I think you can. I know you don't want to, but because there's nobody, there's nobody else. So I think here's the caveat. I think what you just said, Rasta, is a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up. If you're down on Brock Purdy, then you sit Jennings.
Okay.
Because of the correlation. I think if you're a little bit more bullish like I am, I still think there's enough around the Niners to get Purdy. I think it's the Sam Darnold conversation of does Justin Jefferson, have to just be Justin Jefferson to bring Sam Darnold along. I think Brandon Ayuk can be Brandon Ayuk and Jordan Mason can be Jordan Mason, and it can still get Purdy to a decent day. And if he only has one passing touchdown and it doesn't go to Ayuk, it's going to Jennings. So I think if you believe Brock Purdy can still have a decent fantasy day, you can play Jennings. If you are out on Purdy, that sounds like maybe you are, then no, you can't play him.
Question for you. 20-man league, my son's league. I don't know if you remember when I was telling you he was drafting that league with his baseball team, high school baseball team. He picked up Jennings. Interestingly enough, and somebody dropped Jordan Love. He texted me, hey, Dad, should I pick up Jordan Love? You think he's starting? I was like, bro, you go grab Jordan Love right now because he has Caleb. I was like, stop texting me and go grab him and then come back and let me know who else is available. Who else are people dropping? But yeah, so there's no IR spots. So, you with 20 players, or 20 teams, it's tough to manage. But yeah, so he's wanting to start Juwan Jennings over Amari Cooper. And I'm kind of like,
that's a little rich for me.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm like, but rich. Son, do what you want, man. I mean, hey, play with who you want to root for. Obviously, he's not obviously, because my oldest son is actually a Broncos fan. But my younger son is a Niners fan with us here. So I'm like, hey, if you want to root for the Niners, man, and root for your guy, and if he lets you down, then hey, at least you went down with your guy. I totally understand that. That's what fantasy is all about. I'm like, I can't quite get there. Like the analysts in me won't let me put Jennings quite ahead of Cooper, but I can see if you're in that kind of situation and been that Cooper owner with what we've seen these last couple of weeks to just take a flyer on Jennings with the situation that we've been talking about. So
we'll put that in the bold predictions category
for sure. So it's definitely a matchup I'm watching this week to see Jennings versus Cooper, and of course, whichever one I were to tell him, the other one's going to go off. So that's why I'm like, son, you got to just make that decision. I don't want you to hate me over that. All right. So Demarcus Robinson, Ty Johnson, Kobe Parkinson, any of these Rams pass catchers, are you is anyone there we're starting, or are you kind of staying away?
I do think Demarcus Robinson's an interesting flex if you really need somebody. The caveat is that there is 3 missing offensive linemen, so I'd rather not go there. I'm in a ton of leagues, as you know, but I have one league where I have to start Demarcus Robinson because I'm thin at wide receiver, so I don't have a choice. I don't expect it to go well. I'm not starting Ty Johnson. I'm not really going there with Parkinson, but I will say this in DFS, if my memory's right, Colby Parkinson's like $3,600 or something on DraftKings, so he's pretty affordable as a punt tight end this week. He only really needs to get you like 30 yards to pay that off. I do think he can get there, and with the offensive line being as banged up as it is, I expect Sean McVay to let Stafford get the ball out quick. I expect him to kind of just 2-3 step drop, maybe some screen passes, and just kind of get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible with those backup offensive linemen in. So Colby Parkinson's interesting in DFS, but not in a managed league.